One of the cool things about Wisconsin, of course, is our agriculture community. And here to talk a little bit about one of the new products is Jana Rose Schleis. She is the enterprise and investigative reporter for the Capital Times, and a little bit of a cooperative thing we're doing here with Civic Media News and the Capital Times and Madison newspapers. And Jana Rose, thanks for coming on, and welcome. You're the first reporter we're having with the Capital Times, this new venture. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Welcome. So tell us a little bit about where you come from and your background. You have an impressive resume, and kind of what I'm always curious of what led people into reporting and into journalism.
Yeah, my gosh. I'm from Two Creeks, Wisconsin, which is in between two rivers and Kewaunee on the lakeshore. Primarily a dairy farming community, super small community. So that's how I grew up, and studied communication in central Wisconsin. And I was actually a terrible farm kid. Had no interest in it, doing my chores growing up. But I did grow up to be a hardworking reporter. And, 10 years into my career doing that, agriculture is one of my favorite things to cover.
That's super cool. And you went to school at one of the great schools for journalism down at the Missouri School of Journalism. Great. I mean, so many great journalists have come out of that. And it's just one of the most renowned places to study the craft. And then you spent some time at Wisconsin Public Radio as well.
Yeah, for sure. Doing talk radio production like this on the Ideas Network. Yeah, I mean, in Missouri is where I really started agriculture reporting. And growing up in Wisconsin, I was really dairy focused. And then in Missouri, learned a lot more about beef and pork production and other row crops. And after graduation, I did a short stint in D.C. covering the Farm Bill and other federal ag policy, and learn just about what we grow from coast to coast and the different challenges, water issues, and other things going on nationally in agriculture. And just there's so much there, and it impacts our communities, whether you're a farmer or someone in the agriculture industry or not. So just trying to write stories that explain how our food systems and agriculture systems impact us all.
I would think that it aids you in your reporting, in your journalism, to have grown up in a community and in a vocation that you're now reporting on. There's a comfort level there. There's an ease there. There's a familiarity there with the people that you're talking to.
100%. There's still tons to learn. Like, I grew up on a dairy farm. That's a really different operation than other types of farms. But yeah, sources like to know a little bit of my background as I'm asking them to tell me so much about theirs. So sort of understanding the culture and the economics around agriculture makes my reporting a bit easier.
So let's get into this great story. I believe it appeared yesterday in the Capital Times, first of all. And tell us a little bit about the Capital Times. A lot of people know around the state of Wisconsin, part of Madison newspapers, has been around a long time, is now a lot of it is online. Is it monthly or weekly? Is the paper edition?
So we're actually daily online, weekly in print. So our print edition comes out Wednesday morning, and this story I wrote this week, it's the cover. It'll be on newsstands around the Madison area for a week, but it's available online for free everywhere.
That's awesome. So the headline is Kernza, the miracle grain to help fight climate change? Todd's headline would be cookies, beer, and Kernza. But I think this, first of all, I never heard when our program director, Catherine Lake, brought this up, and she said, I have a really cool story about Kernza. And my first question is, what the hell is Kernza? But tell people what this is and how you found out about it.
It is a perennial grain with a funny name, developed by the Land Institute in Kansas. And it is what it sounds like. It's a grain like another wheat grain. It's really small and fine, like a wheat grass, but it's perennial. So you can harvest it. It'll grow back year after year after year. And perennials are just super great for the soil and the water. And as both farmers and consumers and everybody in between are looking for ways to take care of the land and water while we cultivate our food, perennials have huge potential.
Yeah. Reading your story, your reporting, the roots on Kernza are 10 feet?
Truly.
Feet?
Yes. And for comparison, an annual wheat goes about 1 or 2 feet. The roots go about that far into the ground. And, for those who aren't agriculture minded, why deep roots are important and roots at all is alive roots in the soil year round, keep that soil microbes active. It keeps it holds the water. It helps farmers ward off erosion, and it actually holds carbon for the climate minded. That's an interest to them. I interviewed a farmer in Jackson, Ross Bishop, and he planted 5 acres of Kernza on a hilly slope in his farm, and he said it's helped keep that soil in place. When it rains, less of his soil goes with it.
I think it's super interesting. According to your reporting here, it's a very small, very fine grass seed with earthy flavor that tastes similar to bran or nuts. Did you reporting? Did you get to taste any of these things?
I ate it and I drank it.
Really?
Yes.
In both the cookie and the beer form?
Yes. So a large part of my
what
story.
does it actually taste like in a real person's terms?
Yeah. I'll say the beer I tried, Lakefront Brewery, is experimenting with brewing with Kernza. And it was an incredibly refreshing, light, perfect for summer lager. I don't have a super sophisticated beer palate, but head brewer Luther Paul said it added a little bit of spice to the beer, gave it a little bit of an edge. Just tasted really good to me. Yeah. A huge part of my story is, this is a niche market right now. There's less than 24 farmers growing it, and a large part of that is because it's difficult to process and it's expensive to buy, and consumers don't know what it is. Your first question for me was, what is this? Right. There's a lot of education that people have to do in order to make this a mainstream product. It's like any other new product. There's tons of research and development going into it. And what I think is really unique about this Kernza movement in Wisconsin is there are local Wisconsin businesses, Wisconsin processors, researchers, and environmental organizations, as well as ag organizations, who are trying to make this a Wisconsin product. So Simple Cafe and Bakery in Lake Geneva has been experimenting with it for 2 years, and Lakefront Brewery in Milwaukee has been figuring out how to slowly add more of it to some of their test batches of beer in the last year.
We're speaking with Jana Rose Schleis. She is the enterprise investigative reporter for the Capital Times here in Madison. A great story right now you can find for free on the Capital Times website. It'll also be in print this week in the Madison area. Talking about Kernza, an alternative product right now in Wisconsin's ag community. In reading your story, which is fantastic, by the way,
Thank you.
2 things, but you're welcome. 2 things stuck out to me. A, that is to your point, that with so many groundbreaking new products, the challenge is getting it out there, but also overcoming the initial cost of how you process it and making it affordable for people to use it. And also, number 2, you grew up on a dairy farm. My paternal grandparents were dairy farmers. I think one of the misnomers sometimes that gets out there that somehow farming is bad for the land. In my experience, farmers from all types of agriculture are oftentimes the innovators of how to be great conservationists while also producing things.
Yeah, you'll hear many farm ag policymakers say farmers are the original conservationists. And I think that's true here, not only because there's this push from the federal government, from consumers, from private companies to farm more sustainably, but it benefits farmers as well. They're seeing right on their land the impacts of climate change with water quality, with erosion. I mean, they don't want their soil washing away. That impacts their ability to farm. So, more sustainable practices are as much of a benefit to the farm business as they are to everyone else.
You talked to your story here, some of these groups. What I love about this is it's not just one person. There's all these different people and groups. One of them is Clean Wisconsin, a Madison-based nonprofit, and the Michael Feld's Agriculture Institute in East Troy, embarking on a 2-year grant-funded initiative to contact farmers like Bishop or to connect rather Bishop to farmers like them to local businesses. Talk about this innovation between the grant and also the UW. All these people coming together to look at this new product.
Yeah, everybody in the Kernza world knows each other, and I think they talk to all of them for this story. So this is a true collaboration from what I can tell. Both researchers at UW are working with farmers to figure out what are the best growing practices, what are you seeing in your field. I mean, there was even some challenges with how to harvest it. Like it's difficult on the combine because it's such a small grain. So how do we overcome that challenge? To the processing, just huge processing difficulties with this super fine grain. And the Michael Fields Institute is trying to get a local processor some of the equipment they need to be able to do this. So Wisconsin farmers don't have to ship their Kernza to South Dakota to get it processed to ship it back to a local Wisconsin business to use it. So, and yeah, Clean Wisconsin is a part of that effort. The researchers, the farmers, everybody's working together to figure out, everything that needs to happen to make this a Wisconsin product.
You mentioned, I want to go back to it, Lakefront Brewery in Milwaukee, and also was it Simple?
Simple
the bakery. Talk about these two businesses, because what I love about it is they're willing to take a little bit of a risk and be innovators and say, how can we bring a new product to our consumers while also helping this new product advance? Yeah,
both of them are pioneers with using Kernza. They're trying to figure out how to incorporate it into their products, and they had similar and different challenges. With Lakefront, they had the processing challenge. They work with a Breeze Malting out of Chilton, who is usually processing 50,000 pounds of malt, and sending it to the brewery. Kernza not only costs more, it's a much smaller amount to process. So they had some processing challenges, and also they had a challenge with customers didn't know what it was. Right. They're only making 15 barrels and they're selling it in the brew house, and they had originally named it Radical Root Lager, and the owner, Russ Klisch, told me that, people were trying it for the novelty, but they weren't coming back for seconds. So they've renamed the beer Pretzel Wheat, and it sold like gangbusters. So
I had that story highlight. I love that anecdote because so much of it is in a name, right? The marketing. You go from Radical Root Lager, where it doesn't sell much, and you change it to Pretzel Wheat, and it's flying off.
And people are like, I know what that tastes like.
Right?
So, yeah, and the next batch they made is a Crystal Weizen, and I saw that, I went to visit them when they were getting that ready, and by the time the story came out, so the beer was ready, and they had named it Crystal Kernza. So we'll see how that does.
I love the fact that so much of it is how you put things out there in people's minds, right? And once you explain it and kind of make it fun, I think that's fantastic. Alex Heilman is the director of supply and trading for the MAD Markets, the Sustainable Farming Supply Chain Coordinator. Talk a little bit about him in about a minute and a half before we have the first break.
Yeah, he is working with growers in Minnesota, and Minnesota is a bit ahead of us as far as Kernza is concerned and other perennial grains. But he's trying to help this grower co-op in Minnesota get their Kernza and other perennial grains to market. And he described to me how he's been doing this for 2 years. 2 years ago, he is calling up every single grower and asking them, how much do you have? What does it look like in the field? When is it ready for harvest? Getting all of these data points. And similarly, for brewers and bakers to know what they're working with, they need a consistent quantity and quality. So he's also sending this Kernza to labs and saying, I need you to test it for this, this, and this, like you would other wheats. And it's new to the labs as well. So it really takes a group of dedicated people to figure out all of these many steps to get a product to market.
And also, I think it's just cool that once again, Wisconsin is leading the nation to a large degree in something. Your reporting here says less than 2,500 acres of Kernza grown in the United States, 196 of which are grown in Wisconsin. So
yeah, and that's about less than 24 farmers. It's split among.
We're going to come back to a little break here and talk about Kernza chocolate chunk cookies. Anything with chocolate and cookies. You can put whatever grain you want in there. I don't think you can mess it up.
They were really good.
I'll come back, and Jana Rose has also been so kind as to invite your phone calls. Give us a call, 855-752-4842, if you'd like to ask a question about Kernza or her reporting at the Capital Times. 855-752-4842, 855-75-CIVIC. You can also text us on the Civic Media app. Don't go anywhere now. Come on back and talk more. Jana Rose Schleis of the Capital Times and Kernza. You're listening to the Todd Albaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Our guest this half hour, Jana Rose Schleis. She is the enterprise investigative reporter at the Capital Times here in Madison, talking to us about her great new story you can get for free. How about that? They don't even have to go through a paywall or anything. They can just go to the Capital. It's capitaltimes.org or .com?
.com.
All right. Capitaltimes.com. And you can find this fantastic story called Is Kernza the Miracle Grain to Help Wisconsin Fight Climate Change? And Civic Media News is proud to partner with Capital Times and bringing you some of these news stories when they first come out. And Jana Rose, really great reporting here. I want to get into this part of it that just maybe honest to God, want to go out to a bakery. And people that know me, I love a good sweet. And so you write in here, there are 2 sheets of Kernza chocolate chunk cookies rotating in the back inside of the oven at Simple Bakery in Lake Geneva, overseen by baker Michelle Knoll. Tell us about visiting Simple Bakery.
Yeah, they were so hospitable to me. I went and got to watch them work with the 2 products they're baking Kernza in, which is the chocolate chunk cookies, and they're also rolling it out into a thin cracker that they then sell in bags. And their founders are Tom Hart and Young Cho, and they've been open for more than a decade. And their mission is to source all of their ingredients for both the cafe and the bakery locally, and also to build relationships with those farmers and growers. Young told me that a couple times a year they'll take the whole staff out to like the farm where they get their eggs and things like that. And so Kernza was a real natural fit for them, something grown in Wisconsin and something new. So they're experimenting with it, but in order for a baker to use Kernza, that really fine grass seed needs to be ground into a flour. And nobody in Wisconsin was doing that until very recently. So they were doing it all themselves just to make these 2 products. It was taking hours a day. Michelle showed me the in-house miller that they had. I mean, it's the size of a regular kitchen appliance. And she said it would get overheated and clogged and, it just took a long time. And they were barely keeping up with the amount of flour they needed for these cookies and crackers. But it's just really showing you the dedication that needs to go into using a new product. There's a lot of trial and error.
And again, we're talking about Kernza, this new ag product, at least new to Wisconsin, a perennial grain. So unlike wheat or barley, they have to be planted every year. This is something that comes up every year. And according to your reporting here, what I do find interesting, and we'll see what time says, but it does seem to, the yields do seem to decrease over time. So maybe it has to be dug up or replanted, and we just don't know yet.
For sure. And researchers at UW-Madison are looking into that. Maybe a replanting every 5 or 6 years is what's necessary. Maybe there's different types of fertilizing techniques. And another huge environmental benefit of Kernza is its dual use. You can harvest it for the grain, and then farmers are finding that they can harvest the stalk for either straw or forage. Some farmers are even letting their livestock go out there and graze it. So, I mean, definition of sustainable is kind of 2 for 1. So that's a real benefit as well.
Well, and that's why, again, I just go back to, it's another great example of Wisconsin's agriculture community diversifying itself and being forward thinking. I mean, again, my grandparents on my dad's side were dairy farmers, and my grandfather was one of the first ones to start using contour farming. And when he was a kid, and it was a big deal, right, about how you're going to protect the land. And now we got this new product, Kernza, who, not only is there potentially money in a yield for a crop, but as you said, you could also use it to whether bed the cattle or graze animals or whatever, and you're stopping or helping prevent soil erosion. It just, if we can get a market for it, if they can develop it, it seems like a win all the way around.
For sure. And farming can often be a high overhead type of operation. So a perennial, if you don't have to pay for the feed, the fuel, and the cost it takes to replant every year, that's saving farmers input costs as well.
855-752-4842 if you'd like to call in and ask Jana Rose a question. 855-752-4842. You could also text us on the Civic Media line. And don't forget, coming next hour, our Scotty Summer Text to Win contest. And by the way, one of our prizes is a stay in Lake Geneva.
Oh, nice.
So I mean, you can
go to visit Simple.
Visit Simple Bakery in Lake Geneva if you're one of the winners of our grand prize.
Now I wish I could participate.
Right? Well, we can still make a trip to Lake Geneva and have a cookie.
That's true.
You touched on this a little bit, but it says Kernza, you're reporting here on the Capital Times. Kernza can cost $3 to $5 per pound in terms of what the bakery, Simple Bakery, uses in terms of product, whereas other bakery ingredients cost just over 50 cents per pound. And so sometimes this gets passed up on because like so many things, like I've talked about openly in this show, I am an exclusive buyer of Organic Valley milk because years and years back in 2007, I started using it. I thought I was kind of slightly, lactose intolerant. I've never had a problem since I started drinking organic milk. I'm willing to pay a couple extra bucks for this. Is it going to be the same with Kernza, where consumers are going to have to be willing to pay a little bit more in order to help this new product along?
Well, that's a big question in sustainable ag right now. Can we make something like Kernza a mainstream product where enough people are incorporating it into, their beer, their bakery goods, and it can bring that cost down? Or are we going to be dependent on a much smaller market, consumers like you who are willing to pay a premium? That is what people working on this are trying to figure out. And Lakefront Brewery and Simple Bakery are sort of willing to bear that cost right now, and Simple is passing that on to customers. Their crackers are about $8 a bag, so compare that to what you can buy a box of wheat thins for. It's significantly more, but part of that, some consumers will pay for that. They like that sustainable story, but that's not a large part of the market.
I think it all comes down to how we decide to spend our disposable income and what's important to us.
Mm-hmm. Definitely vote with your dollars is what they say.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, it's a remarkable piece. Some great photos in here as well. I'm looking at this one with it's Beck Hendrickson is the photographer there. Holy cow, it looks just beautiful down there in Lake Geneva. And I encourage people to go to capitaltimes.com and read this great story called "Is Kernza the Miracle Grain to Help Wisconsin Fight Climate Change?" by Jana Rose Schleis. She is the enterprise investigative reporter at Capital Times. Great reporting, great story. Made me happier for having read it. And I feel a little smarter because now I'm having a beer with someone. I'm like, well, have you ever tried Kernza? And they'll be like, what's Kernza? Well, you don't know what Kernza is? I mean, you've made me smarter, and for that alone, I appreciate it.
Happier and smarter is what I want for my readers. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm really excited. I know all of us here at Civic Media are really excited to begin this new partnership with the Capital Times and do more things like this on a regular basis.
Thank you so much, Todd.
You're fantastic. Always welcome. Thank you very much. That's Jana Rose Schleis, the enterprise investigative reporter at the Capital Times.